Well, first of all, thank you all for inviting me here. It's been delightful these couple of days. I've enjoyed the event in meeting people and meeting different individuals just to fine-tune the discussion we're having today. So I guess just to set the scene for what we're about to hopefully engage in, it's about how do we accelerate? I mean, Oasis 500 is an accelerator. We're based in Amman. We invest seed stage investments across the Middle East and North African markets. But we've always had this continuous debate with the government agencies that we engage with thought leaders across different geographies and markets. And we do have the opportunity of talking continuously to people and officials who create policy. So the main point that is the basis of what we wanted to have here is how do we collectively accelerate? And it has to happen now. The challenges are immense, and I think that's a key point that we always talk about. So the first point that we wanted to always highlight on the importance of acceleration is that acceleration resonates and starts and ends with people. So it is people that make a difference specifically. And it's people that can deliver the overall change that we are interested in seeing for the region that we are in the Middle East, North Africa, but specifically where I come from the Arab world. You've all, I guess, fully engaged with our region because all the news is coming from our part of the world. It's not good news in many places, but it's generally a challenging moment for the whole region. Many people have mentioned today that oil prices have been a major reason for the fall of economies and the changing elements going there. But I think that the main driver for change is, and what we continuously repeat to the people we work with, is that we need to give individuals the opportunity to become heroes within their own communities and societies. And I think what I wanted to share here is we're learning in this process. As a case study, we started in 2010 with only a very small fund. Today, I manage over $40 million in terms of total funds that I can deploy for seed stage investment purposes. But I think the overall element that you'll see here repeated, and this is how we talk to different stakeholders in the region, is why do people invest? Okay. Now, in the last 5 years, our startups have been capable of collecting from the market, follow-on rounds, follow-on funding of around $37 million. But the most important element for me specifically to guide our strategy and guide some of the points that we're talking about here today is why do these investors invest in our region within our own market? The other point is the profile of the people that we invest in. Okay, so we've had across the region around 9,000 plus people share with us their ideas that they believe are worthy of an investment. And as a seed stage ideation exercise, we always invite these individuals into what normally people call a boot camp, but it's a 5-day robust assessment for us to meet people and say, are you really the right investment or not? Now, we made an investment into 121 startups. Okay, and 40 shut down. That's another learning curve for us. Why did they shut down? How did these seed investments perform? Recently, in the last 3-4 months, 8 of our investments alone raised, and this is over and above that 37 million, but in the last 3 months, they raised by themselves around $20 million. So what's the driving mechanics for that to happen? And of course, value. Where does value come from? I mean, I'm very happy to see that our portfolio companies are increasing in value. We're running at 129 million. We're running at the 1.7x. But this is the basis for the science that we're trying to use to articulate how do we create value, how do we accelerate at the country level, how do we accelerate at the regional level. Now, just to put you in perspective, the numbers are adding up negatively. 2025, people are saying that the unemployed in the Arab world are going to be maybe 60 million. Somebody will say 40 million, but regardless, the numbers are staggering. So then the main premise of our debate and discussion is that we need to totally move away from the current status quo. Okay, so we need to understand that we have to think young, because the majority of the people in the world, in our part of the world at least, are the minority. I mean, the people are making decisions are in the 25%, 40, 35 years old, and the majority are 35 younger. So 75% of the Arab population is younger than 35, 50% younger than 15. Those numbers mean that you have to think in an unconventional way, unorthodox, revolutionary, and totally disruptive. What's very interesting is that every 5 years in the Arab world, every 5 years, you can have a total paradigm shift. All those are 15-year-olds will become 20, and in that, they can change their psychographics, their consumer behavior. Everything becomes a reason for change. So that's a very nice, vibrant place for ideas to grow. Another important element is, if you look at the negativity that surrounds us, and how we see it is that there's an opportunity of creating a lot of innovation because of it. Rebuilding cannot be like yesterday. I mean, that's a very important message that has to be clearly understood. When you talk about rebuilding, we look within Jordan at the opportunities that will rise because we need to rebuild Syria tomorrow, okay? And if we take that as a simple example, it means that everything we were used to do will totally change. When you talk about education, we're looking for startups in the education space that can basically come in and leapfrog education to bring people who have been out of education for 4 to 5 years, 6 to 7 years, and then introduce a totally different dynamic in terms of how they can educate. If you talk about health, the same thing applies. How can we start to understand that everything we can do for tomorrow has to be totally different versus what it was, and that catalyst is a very strong positive change for us. So although we are surrounded by crisis, in crisis we see there's a lot of opportunity. Of course, there's a repeated cycle that everybody keeps talking about, which is, we've been trying, the problem that when the barrel of oil, and of course the Arab world is not equal in any way, right? I come from Saudi Arabia originally, so only the GCC have oil. Everybody else doesn't. Jordan doesn't. What Jordan does have as a great asset is people. The whole ecosystem of startups is dominated by Jordanians. The first unicorn, Souk, is a Jordanian startup. The first story that began, an example of it was mentioned earlier on, Maktub is a Jordanian startup. A lot of the VC money is being managed by Jordanian entrepreneurs and Jordanian VC management. And of course, just looking at Oasis, looking at Amman per capita, we're a 6 million population, and you see the number of startups we've invested in shows you the opportunity that we represent. But we keep continuously saying we want to become knowledge economies. I think now everybody has reached the reality that it has to happen now. You missed the opportunity when you had a lot of money. Now you basically have to do it with much, much less. And that's always another reason for doing something in a very innovative manner. Now, this is a very important issue that I've learned. When I talk about, my job is to go and help my startups raise money, okay? So one very important area is that the region isn't us in this room, okay? One problem that I think that this ecosystem, startups and the startup ecosystem is facing is that it might be living in a bubble, okay? And in doing so, we lose the opportunity that all the other capital in the region can afford to give us. One of the best examples I give here is in the last 9 months to a year, the best angels, the people who can give money quicker than any other angel and larger ticket sizes are people that are 60 and 70-year-old individuals. People that are the heads of their own family conglomerates in the Arab world because they get it. And I always give this example to a lot of our startups, and I think it was very nicely mentioned in the panel before, is get your value argument logically presented. You just can't go into a meeting. These people are willing to give you, against negative cash flow, no P&L in terms of profits. They can live with you for a year, 5, 7, 8, 9. They're willing to take risk with you, but give them a good argument for them to do so, okay? And I think that's what we continuously miss, the emphasis on value and valuations, and not the emphasis on you're really trying to solve a problem, and you want someone to help you solve that problem. And this is an example of a problem. So and I think that's a very important note to take into consideration, because it's helped me a great deal in delivering something I call delivering exponential growth. Rather than alienate the legacy families and the legacy businesses that dominate the Arab world, dominate the region in general, dominate the touch points that I want to get results through, I found it much more beneficial for us to engage with them on a continuous basis and deliver value through such partnerships that work for us. All right, well, so I think the key elements that are very appealing and important for our success is that identifying exponential growth partners becomes an important way of us going forward. And the flow of thought basically is, okay, good. Let me just basically go back one slide. All right. Yep. So I think, one other very important element, when you start to look outside of this ecosystem, okay, there are multiple outside the startup ecosystem that we're used to, there are many unicorns if valuation is the indicator. So if valuation is that, are there unicorns in the Middle Eastern, North African markets that are valued at more than $1 billion US? There are many, but they're not registered in the ecosystem. What I mean by that is that they are exits that happen, and they have also exited. They've been totally bought out by others, but they are within the context of these family businesses and conglomerates that are used to working together, low profile, create businesses, buy them out, and continuously keep that cycle going. So it's important for me, at least, to go and try to continuously advocate for us to have more inclusion within this ecosystem. Bring in those individuals that we rarely see in these meetings and make sure that they do share with us their experiences. Another key element that I always find important when we talk about national and regional acceleration is that we need to think local. We need to think MENA. In many ways, we keep saying acceleration, and even the terminologies that we all use are imported. Acceleration for us is a replica of the Y Combinator model, the lean startup model. Everything else that basically we saw outside and we brought in, and we're trying to use that as a method of introducing these concepts. Even the term angel investors, in a way, for some, it alienates people. It doesn't mean that, even the Arabizing the word angel has been a challenge for us, right? What do you call angel investors? You just can't go and say, the word angel is used totally differently in the context of our, social gatherings. You just can't go and tell someone, I want you to be an angel. He laughs at you in a way. So it's important for you to localize these terms to make sure that when you do things in this region, you do it with MENA in mind. And I'll take you through a couple of points, basically, just to summarize this discussion around the points that I wanted to highlight. But the first thing is, let's be inclusive. Yes, it's great to have, we talk about the struggle, we talk about the challenge. I might disagree with a lot of individuals when they keep telling us that there isn't capital in this region, right? There isn't seed stage capital. There isn't Series A capital. We can't find investors. We're looking for, yes, within the context of this value chain, there's only, Oasis 500 and maybe one or two other seed stage investors that give $30,000 to $50,000 for people to start a business, right? Yes. So therefore, you look at the whole region, one or two is not that many. But if you basically say, and then if you go to angel investors, yes, our network of 300 angels might not be the biggest number that you would like to have to move things forward. And I guess if you keep saying that capital doesn't exist, it's because it doesn't exist in the value chain that you're suggesting, which is important in many ways. But if you extend that and become more inclusive, you'll be surprised with the amount of capital that exists and that is willing to put money in these businesses, not, as people keep continuously say, real estate, okay? They don't. So the other point is partnerships. At the end, we have to accept that businesses and governments are still very key. The old business structure is still very key for us to go forward and deliver exponential growth. An example I gave was a specific startup from Pakistan that we invested in was trying to address a specific problem that's very unique to this region, and I don't think many VCs will even understand. What they wanted to address was peer-to-peer communication between pilgrims during the Hajj, okay? So they created a technology, a wearable, that can be placed on the wrist of someone, and that allows them to literally help individuals communicate in their own language without a telecom or a telecom operator network. They can do peer-to-peer communication. 3 million people during 5 days in the Hajj can help deliver that. So how can a partnership help them deliver exponential growth that might not even allow them to go and ask any more money from any VC? In Saudi Arabia, the pilgrimage or the Hajj is all those 3 million people come through one point. It's a terminal dedicated for pilgrims that come for Hajj. So you have a captive portal. 3 million people come through it, and the entity that manages it is owned, and it's a BOT contract owned by a specific family. So we start to have a discussion with them. How can we create a partnership between us that can allow anyone who wants to solve problems for 3 million people with diverse multiple backgrounds and languages that want to come through this portal and go through it? And that basically can drive for us exponential growth. Or a partnership that we have currently with an airline to address solutions for the aviation sector. And finally, and I think it's key. You know, people keep saying, well, you know, you've seen a lot of the pictures today, and you might have seen some in the morning, and you might see some today, but you might find a unique, common denominator between all of them, right? You might have seen them elsewhere. In many cases, you will find many people in our part of the world, in Turkey, I've been to Dagestan, Moscow, Baku in Azerbaijan. If you go anywhere in the world, you might be surprised to find the number of individuals solving the same thing. The reason for it is probably because they took those ideas from a successful project that they heard about or startup in Europe or in the US, specifically in the US, and they tried to localize it with the local language and roll it out in the region itself. And that is a major lost opportunity. There's a lot of problems locally, and let me give an example of one sector that we should be looking at continuously. Construction. There was a specific example that I can share here basically, where one of the largest built-up areas or the largest construction projects in the world happening today are happening in MENA. And the amount of intellectual property that such construction creates is zero. The total spending in construction in the next 15 years is going to be around $3.2 trillion. The issue specifically is that construction entities, governments that are the reason for this fiscal policy, when they spend, they don't care about IP. In one specific project, which was the highlight of this discussion, Cisco was pushing aggressively to work on delivering the network solutions for the largest built-up project in the world that came out of Mecca. And in that exercise, I was having a discussion with the Cisco engineers, and they said, do you know the amount of intellectual property that we created in solving the problem and solutions related to introducing this network for this project? So that basically was the instigator or the main reason for asking myself, well, why don't we co-own that IP with you? Why are we going to end up with structures and projects and zero IP that we paid for? And that became the snowball effect and the discussion that now is resonating well with a lot of people across the Arab world, a lot of government officials, is that they're asking a simple question. If I'm going to spend $1 billion on a project, that I can use that to create a multitude of startups that can result in addressing a multitude of problems across all of these issues, I think we should own that IP or co-own that IP. And even if international organizations came and solved these problems for us, we will be monitoring any intellectual property created in that cycle, and we will co-own in that IP. Because that IP is going to stay for decades, for centuries beyond the project that just ended and I just threw out at it a couple of $1 billion. So I think it's important that we solve local problems, local issues, address the local challenges that we are facing in the region, and around those, solve and create startups. So I think that's the ending note that I wanted to share with you. I hope you found this very useful and beneficial. Thank you so much.